Welcome to the S.E.M podcast. We've got our guest today is Cameron Loggenberg, all the way from the UK. And I've got my co-host back again with me, Zack Hewlett. This is Jack Bryce. So we're glad to have you with us, man. You've been mentioned on several podcasts. I don't know if you've listened, but there's been several call-outs.
There's been a couple of call-outs, yeah.
The famous Logie Bear and other such names, right?
Yeah, Logie Bear is one of the names, yes.
Yeah.
So it's all false. None of it's true.
Well, you tell your version of the truth today. That's what we're here for.
My version of the truth might differ from everyone else. No, I'm joking. It's all good. All good.
Yeah, I had the privilege of serving around you, and Zack was in the MTC with you, and
we served around each other a little bit too.
Yep.
Yeah. Dundee, wasn't it? You were in not Montrose, was it? What was the unit you're in?
I was the district leader in Hamilton when you were. God, what area were you in? I can't remember, but somewhere in that area, when you were adjacent to Motherwell, and I can't remember what area you're in. You'll probably remember as we go.
Yeah, Rutherglen. Yeah,
Rutherglen. There you go. All right.
Yep.
Now, what part of the UK are you living in now?
So I'm currently in Northern Ireland, in a little village called Groomsport, right on the coast.
You said Grimsport?
Groomsport.
Grooms, okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. What took you to Northern Ireland?
And my wife's from the next village over. Okay. So it was always inevitable we'd end up here sometime. Ironically, she didn't want to move back, but I did.
Okay. Because you guys were in South Africa for a while?
We were in Cape Town for a few years, yeah. Loved it. Absolutely loved it.
That's awesome.
Well,
good.
Zack's jumping the gun here.
Sorry.
You
got to keep track of Logie Bear, man. He's a world traveler.
Yeah. We'll hear you can regale us with all of that here today.
That's right.
So start us off though with how you ended up in Scotland.
Okay, so I spent most of my life growing up in Manchester. I moved down to London when I was 18, I think. And I was, at that time, I was kind of less active. I wasn't fully active. I was nothing bad, but just wasn't really active. And I moved down to London, and I realized after about 6 months that my so-called friends in Manchester were no longer really my friends. And so then I decided, my brother who I was living with said, why don't you go to YSA ward? So I went to YSA and I met Elder Asari-Adu's sister. And then she just dragged me by the ear to YSA each week. So a couple of years later, I put my papers in. So papers went in. I was actually in the Kent stake, and in the Maidstone stake in a place called Chatham in Kent. And my mission call was actually, I'm jumping the gun. So I was working in London, living with my brother in Kent. I came home one night and I walked into the house and he was sat there on the sofa, and he had the day off that day. So he'd spent the whole day at the house staring at this mission paper. So it was just me and him. So my family were all up in Manchester. So I opened up the papers there, and it said, you have been called to serve in the England Manchester mission.
Called home.
So I'd left Manchester 2 years before, and I'm sat there going, that's different. That's a bit confused, but I just went, fair enough. At least I'll know some people. At least I know what areas to avoid. So as long as I don't have to knock on doors of any friends from school or anything like that, or ex-girlfriends, I said I'm not too bothered. And then that night I phoned my mother, who was actually at a stake council meeting in Manchester Stake. So my brother messaged her and said, listen, he's got his papers. She was at the meeting. She was expecting my call. She stepped out for my phone call. And she walked in. She was furious. She walked back into the state council meeting, and the mission president was actually in the ward of my parents. And the mission office was on the home and the same road as my home growing up. So he said, he looked to my mum and went, don't worry, I've already spoken to the First Presidency. So that was it. And then a couple of months later, that was about October time, I think it was. And about a month or so later, I got a letter from Scotland, Edinburgh, saying you've been reassigned to us. And then I had to phone up. I think I spoke to Elder Pollen actually when he was in the office. But my brother had served in Scotland a few years prior to that, so I was happy enough. It was adventure. I would have loved to have gone somewhere hot and exotic, but Scotland got hot 2 days a year, didn't it?
Maybe.
We had some sun sometimes.
Definitely some exotic things.
Yeah. I think I remember getting a suntan for 2 days. But no, all good. So I was actually at a dance down in London on New Year's Eve. So obviously 31st of December. And we were reporting on the 5th of January. I went with Hewlett.
Yep.
And then, so I was, the girl I was dating at the time, she was chatting to some people, and some people that she knew, Elder Cotton Betteridge, and then also David Pilkington as well, Elder Pilkington.
Mm-hmm.
So the three of us were just chatting. And I think Ashley Devine was there. I don't know if he was there or not. And I think Brian Barber might have been in there also. But so it was good fun. Wow. We met each other before we went to the MTC.
You met all of them? Because that was like our entire group going to Scotland, right?
Yeah, was there 8 of us going up or 6?
Yeah, because me, Streeter, and Fisher were the Americans, and then the rest of you were from England.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure most of them were there. They'll have to. I know you've seen Barbara. I know you've done Divine. We'll have to check. We'll have to message you. But I'm pretty sure. I know Cotton Betteridge was there. I know Pilkington was there. So we chatted. And we talked about Scotland and talked about the hopes and dreams. And at one point, other people were talking about how they got somewhere exotic. But do you know what it is? It's called to serve, and you just get on with it.
There you go.
Yeah, it was pointed out actually in our state conference recently. There was a sister missionary who was reassigned partway through her mission to be a service missionary, and she said the call reads, "You're called to be a missionary, but you're assigned to serve in a specific area." I thought
Elder Bednar did the talk. Elder Bednar did the talk as well, didn't he? About you're called to serve, and it's just that's your location.
Yeah.
Right.
And wasn't that a year before COVID as well? Because there was a lot of reassignments during COVID, wasn't there?
A whole lot.
Yeah, that's true. A lot of stuff changed as a result of that.
Yep. Nuts. So that was me. And then I reported to duty on what day of the week was it? If you look, do you remember? Was that Monday, Tuesday?
I think it was a Wednesday, because I flew out on a Tuesday. I got sent apart on Monday, flew out on Tuesday the 4th, and got there on Wednesday the 5th. Yeah.
And it was a small group, wasn't it? Because we only had a few bedrooms, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, if you remember, I think there were 3 or maybe 2 or 3 sisters, like companionships at most.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they had, how they had the dividing curtain. We were on like the far end of the staircase, if you remember that.
Yeah.
Like we had to walk past the echo chamber, perfect acoustics, that went down to the main area, all the way to the other end to go down the stairs and then to come to class and food and things. But I thought that was kind of strange. Like, why didn't we just have bedrooms towards the stairs as opposed to being on the other side? But I don't know. It was where we were told to be.
Didn't they put us closer to the sisters as well?
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying.
We were here. The door was there. The sisters were on the other side.
Right.
So it was just chatting through the doors.
Right. Well, if you'd listened to Divines, I locked him out of our our bunk that night because I was like, "Come on, Elder, it's time for bed," and he was like, basically waving me off, and I said, "Nope, all right, goodbye." Lock the door.
I need my
But-
sleep.
Yeah, exactly. I wasn't about to wait up for him. No way.
Dude.
So we'll skip over the mission and tell us what you've been up to since you got home. Nearly
So
16 years now.
it's not that long. It's not that long. I still look like a spring chicken, surely.
Of course, you look the same.
Yeah, slightly less hair. Just migrated south. So I returned home. I then actually went to university for a while. Because I think you might remember Hewlett. I'd talked about becoming a plumber after a mission.
Yeah.
And then one of my companions did my little van design and everything, Logie Bear Plumbing. It was quite funny. Held a belt and it was just funny. I think he had some fun on a P-day one morning, just doodling. So I came home, went to university, did an access course because I hadn't done A-levels here. So I've done an access course, passed with flying colours. You know, as a missionary, you can. One of the modules we had to do was do a presentation, and I just winged it the night before I put together this piece, and I just stood there, arrogantly put together this presentation, and it was easy, really. It was we'd done worse as missionaries,
right? Yeah.
And so passed. I got onto the course, and then about 6-7 months in, this wasn't for me. University wasn't the life that President Vriens and President Fredrick had said that you was going to be. And at the time, I'd been recently married, so I met my wife about 4 weeks after I got home. In fact, it might have been sooner than that. So I came home. She was my sister's friend in the YSA, and so my wife was saying to my sister that there's no good men, and there still obviously isn't any good men, but there's no good men. And my sister said, "Well, my brother comes home in a couple of months. You can have him." And then I'd come home, and I was teaching a couple of the classes at Institute, and she'd gone home. She'll kill me for telling this. She'd gone home and told Mum, "There's a guy that's just got home. I think I'm going to go on a few dates with him." So she ensnared me, and then that was it.
While you were fresh.
She got me while I was fresh. Yep. We dated for a few months. So that was February, March. She better not watch this. I'll be in trouble. February, March, and then a couple of months later we got engaged. And I had to come over to Northern Ireland to ask her dad for permission. Well, I asked her.
How was that?
That was fine. That was all right. So we weren't. So it was after Easter. So I'd come over for Easter break, and her dad. The first thing he said to me was, in his broadest Northern Irish accent, "Where you at?" And I'm like, imagine being back in Scotland again your first week, and you're thinking, "Who is this Ken? And how does everyone know him?"
Yeah.
And I'm like, "I'm in the kitchen. Where are you?" And he goes, "No, where you at? Where you at with life?" And I'm like, "Well, I haven't a clue." And then the next day, I didn't have any clue who any of these people were. The next day, we were just having a kind of a chat with my now mother-in-law, and she was in bed with my wife, and they were just, they'd been chatting for a few hours. And I just walked in, started tickling my mother-in-law's feet, because that's what you do when you're stupid and young. Started to tickle the feet, and I hadn't a clue that she absolutely detested people touching her feet. So my first impression to my in-laws were, "Who is this idiot?" and get rid of him.
Oh, it's too funny.
So yeah, that was how I met the in-laws. My mother-in-law still holds it against me. So then we lived in a town called Macclesfield, just south of Manchester. We had all 3 children there. So I finished university. I left university and then did my plumbing that I was going to do, and then set up a business. made some good money, did all right for ourselves. We didn't struggle. And then one day I decided we're going to sell up and move to Cape Town. So that was after 10 years. And so we'd honeymooned in the little village, town called Fishook in Cape Town. And I'd always wanted to go back. And it just felt like home to me. Being from South Africa originally, being born there and I left when I was 3. It was always somewhere I'd wanted to live. And I finally got my way with the wife and we moved. So we sold everything, sold the house, sold beds, TVs, everything, moved to Cape Town. And that was a tough 2 years. I was going out to a job that didn't materialize. And I'm sat there as a husband provider thinking, I have failed. What have I done? But then a couple of months later, I had experience of taking a few guys to the temple for the first time. It was just amazing. So that was, it was a couple of months after that we got the answer as to why we were there. And it was for a few people, but it was really difficult. I mean, there was days when I would feel like I was just an absolute failure. I felt like, what on earth have I done? We had a decent life. We had good friends in Manchester, and we sold everything and just left. But it was good. I miss it every day. It's a glorious country. Everyone should visit. And then I was actually driving to a job site one day, set up a business again when I was in Cape Town. When I realized the job wasn't going to materialize, I set up a business again in construction. And then I was driving to a site one day. This was a couple of months after my mum had passed. And I just got this answer, this overwhelming feeling that it's time to move to Northern Ireland. And I had never, ever wanted to move to Northern Ireland. It is not a place I ever thought of living. It was, I didn't want to be too close to the in-laws. The whole family, the in-laws lived within a radius. One brother-in-law lives about 100 meters from my mother-in-law. The other sister-in-law at the time lived another couple of 100 meters away. They were all very, very close. And brilliant family, I love them dearly. But I didn't want to be in that bubble. So I messaged my wife and just said, I think it's time for us to move. And she said, I don't want to. This isn't right for me. And, excuse me. We then fasted and prayed and we got the answer that it's time to move to Northern Ireland. And so we moved back here in March 2019. And then the year later, obviously, COVID hit. And had we been in Cape Town when COVID was there, we'd have been scuppered. We would have lost everything. So, very fortunate. Landed a job here. I was going to set up my own business again, construction. But the state president has a company. He and his brother phoned me up when they knew I was moving over. It's a small stake, so everyone knows everyone. He phoned me up and said, would you like a job? And I was project manager there. I was there for about 18 months. And then I moved to contracts manager at the current place. So I've been there 2 years and I'm leaving there in a month. So going to be technical director. And that's designing plumbing stuff. So back into what I love. Doing lots of drawings.
Good for you.
That's great. So good. Love it. Very blessed. We live a 2-minute walk from the beach. Go for a dip, Christmas Day, New Year's Day. Crazy people.
Oh man, polar plunge.
Yes, definitely a polar plunge. It's freezing here.
And what ages are your kids now?
So I've got 3. I've got an 11-year-old who turns 12 in 2 weeks. 10-year-old, he turns 11 in a month and 2 weeks. That was an unexpected surprise. And then I got an 8-year-old. So Rosalie, she's the 11-year-old. Ruan, he is the 10-year-old, and Ezekiel, he's the 8-year-old. 3 crazies. Drives me crazy every day. Love them dearly. You know what it's like.
Yep. My 3 are about the same ages. That's fun.
And how's yours finding young women's, young men's? Has your eldest started?
My daughter is just turned 8, so she's kind of the thick of. She just got baptized the beginning of September, and just trying to figure out where she fits at this point in time. But she'll get there.
Yeah, Ezekiel's the same. He was June baptized as well.
Yeah.
My oldest will be in Young Women's in January, and it's like terrifying me. I can't believe it.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
I can't believe how
my middle one moves up in January too, and he's just bouncing to get in. Cannot wait.
I remember those. I remember those days in primary where you're just like, get me out of like the little kid club, right? Let me graduate to the big kids. And I'm sure it's nicer now because they can go when they're 11 to turn 12. For me, my birthday's in November. And so I had like that whole 11, and my birthday's the end of November. So I basically had 12 months or 11 months of primary torture before I turned 12. I was like, get me out of here. So yeah, I can understand where he's at.
Yeah, he loves primary, but he just cannot wait to be one of the big kids. He started Scouts. He started Scouts last week. He moved up from Cubs, went to Scouts last week, and he's like, Dad, one of the kids has got a mustache. He's massive. So he's just like, and I beat them at dodgeball. I'm thinking maybe they let you win, son, but no, he's loving it. My daughter, who's in Young Women's, she's the only young woman. So that's tough for her, but it's good because she can invite school friends. But yeah, kids are great. Wife's great. My wife's a primary school teacher. And then kids are just started high school, the first one. The next one starts high school next year.
Wow.
And the other one joins the circus in a few months' time, hopefully.
Fantastic. That's really good. All right, so let's go back to the mission now. You can start in the MTC with your experience there, and we'll just keep progressing.
Yeah, so MTC, Hewlett, you'll have to remind me. Was my companion's name Elder Houston?
That sounds right.
Was Elder Houston, was he from Nevada?
Maybe. I don't remember where he was from, but I think you're right. I think the name is correct. Because he went somewhere in England, right?
Yeah, he went to Manchester.
Manchester.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's right, yeah. So he went to Manchester. So he was my companion. So here's me. I was 20 years old. I was no wiser than anyone else, but I was 20 years old, nearly 21. And I was just like, this is weird. I never forget we were, jackets on to pray, jackets back on to pray every single time. And then I think it was Elder Keir? One of the teachers, Brother Keir, taught, he laughed and said, well, the Lord doesn't answer your prayers unless you've got your blazer on, boys.
Jeez Louise.
He was joking. He was just, sarcastically saying. But so that was, MTC was an experience. I mean, I didn't hate it. I enjoyed the first week, and then it got a little bit tiresome. Do you remember one like Hewlett when we all went downstairs to the kitchen?
Mm-hmm.
And we went in and we snuck into the kitchen. Snuck into the kitchen. God. I found the freezer and found the ice cream, so that was me sorted.
I was too worried about getting in trouble that I didn't take anything. I remember that. That's too funny. I think we went down into the basement too, right?
Yes. Well, the basement was the kitchen, wasn't it?
Yeah, I guess you're right. But there was like
the main level was the main teaching level. Mm-hmm. That was ground floor, if you like. The first floor was the bedrooms.
Right.
And then it was down the basement, which opened up to the pond, wasn't it? Which was the kitchen, cafeteria.
Yeah, but I remember that night we kind of went exploring and found out that there were like additional classrooms in the basement, like on the other end of the building. Do you remember that?
I don't remember that.
There are classrooms down there. My group was huge, and we used those classrooms.
And the reason why is because if you remember, on the back of the clocks in the MTC, we would flip them over in the bedrooms, and they had like missionaries who'd written their
Yes.
names on the back of the clocks. And we were absolutely determined to find a clock that had no other writing on it. And so we went down and found one in one of the classrooms in the basement so we could all write our names on it. And then we hung it back up, I think the next day or something. I don't remember. But I remember that the little journey that we went on. I forgot you went into the kitchen and got ice cream, though. That was too funny.
Yeah, I got ice cream, I think. The other guys guys and girls were getting toast.
Right.
A proper feast. We were.
Oh my gosh. We did not eat poorly. That's for sure. I mean, Divine said that about me. But my biggest thing is I'm a big cereal guy, and I remember the first thing that I went to is a cereal, and it was like muesli, and I was like, "What the heck is this?"
Yeah.
It was a muesli. I was like, "What is this?" I can't, it was just so like bland and dry, and I was just like, I got to eat something else. So I think that's why I ate so many pieces of toast.
It was that catering toaster, wasn't it? You put it in and it kind of went around the conveyor belt.
Oh, yeah.
It came out and it was never perfect, but if you put it in for a second time, it would burn. You had to catch it before it'd get around the other side. But no,
that's right.
No, the NTC was great. The first weekend I loved. It got tiresome. I always thought, actually, a couple of months into the mission, I thought the MTC should be, a week and a half, 2 weeks of the MTC, out to the mission field. And then you realize how little you actually know and how much you need to pay more attention to the MTC and back to the MTC for a week. And that's the way the MTC should be. MTC 2 weeks, mission for 3 weeks, back to the MTC and then back out to field. That's my thoughts anyway. Maybe President Nelson, next conference will change.
Yeah, I'm sure the travel costs would go through the roof for that. My goodness. Yeah, my favorite part about the MTC was just being in such close proximity that we got to go to the temple. I think we went 3 times, right? And for me, like thinking about how much time we had between then and the likelihood of not going to the temple for 2 years was kind of daunting. And so those 3 sessions that we went through they were definitely special.
Yeah, it was a nice experience. And there was a couple of, was there some Swiss or German elders?
Mm-hmm.
So they had to have the translations, which I'd never seen those things rise up and the TVs popped out.
That's right.
What's this? This is for special guys. This is guys who are really righteous. This is their calling election made show.
That's right.
No, the MTC was a great experience. I thought we had some good teachers. We had Brother McGuinness, Brother Smith, Brother Keir, Sister Nan McClure. Yeah, we had some great teachers. And I never forget singing. Do you remember we sang for the mission president? Were they not leaving the MTC presidents when we were leaving?
I don't think I don't remember what the occasion was, but I do remember singing.
Because one of the sister missionaries who went to Manchester, she arranged it, didn't she? I think it was her and yourself and Elder Pilkington arranged the singing.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I remember that.
It was just great fun.
It was.
So yeah, it was a good experience. I enjoyed going to play chair football. I'm trying to play basketball.
Yeah, and then volleyball when Divine killed himself.
Yes, I love volleyball. It was great. The MTC was a good experience.
Agreed.
And it brings back memories because obviously I go to Temple here in Preston, and I take the kids, and I'm like, that was one of my classrooms, and my bedroom was up there, and so the kids get to experience it, and hopefully they'll get to go to Provo MTC because that means somewhere exotic. But if they go to Preston MTC, then fair enough.
Yeah, for sure.
And then we did the train ride up to Scotland, didn't we?
Mm-hmm.
And we all had good intentions of converting someone on that train ride. Someone was going to join the church because we were going to talk to them. And I'll never forget, we got on the train. A couple of us made a beeline for people that had a seat next to them, and they just got up and walked away. So,
I remember that. Gosh. That was not me.
Check right away.
Yeah, they just saw the badges and it's like, oh, not these guys again. Here we go.
Is it really Wednesday again and they're sending another lot up to Scotland?
these guys look awfully green, don't they?
Yeah, that's right.
It's when it's coming south, when it's going home, it's like, oh, these guys don't care. We can sit next to them.
That's right. Goodness.
Yeah, so went obviously up to Edinburgh, Everton Waveney, and then we got picked up by the mission presidents and the assistants and the office elders, and went and met our companions, didn't we? I got lumbered with Elder Bredlow. No, not lumbered. He was a good guy. The German. I think it was Elder Divine or Elder Barbara that said, you get pointed out with someone that you actually look like, don't you? So Elder Bredlow and I were two old guys. He was grey. I was balding. So it was a natural fit.
Jeez Louise.
So, I'll never forget in the ride up to, we went tracting that first night, didn't we?
Mm-hmm.
By the way, they don't call it tracting or chapping anymore in Scotland. They call it harvesting.
Oh, really?
They call it harvesting. You're not allowed to call it tracting or chapping. You get told off by the mission president if you call it. Because chapping and tracting aren't in the scriptures, elders.
I guess so. You're right.
So we were in the minibus, and the assistants were there. So Kofi Asayadu, who was going home that next day. So I said, his sister had written to him and said, right, look out for this guy. Try and drown him or push him off Pratt's Hill if he gets a chance. And then so he and I were talking, and we're talking about who we knew, because obviously in England. And I said, I know Sister McLean. He's like, oh, yeah, Sister McLean. And I'm like, yeah, I dated Sister McLean before. So then they were trying to find out what happened, but she was a powerhouse. Yeah, she was absolutely fantastic. And then it was great fun. Just never forget, just knocking on that door. I was with a missionary. I think I was with Elder Clawson.
Okay.
And there was a group of us, because we weren't with our companions yet, were we?
No, not yet.
And I think I was with Elder Clawson, and I think he had a golf ball, and he was just trying to show us how cool. This is how you chat properly. You have a golf ball, you save your knuckles, and you just chap on the door. So that was a great experience. And then up to Pratt's Hill. And I think it was you and me that carried Ashley Divine down the hill, did we not? Between the two of us.
Did. Yeah.
But that was an experience.
It was so dark. That was one of my memories, because, it's the end of January, and we went up in the evening, and we hiked that thing like at dusk. And then on the way down, it was pitch dark. Like I could barely see anything in front of me. That was my memory of the first time that we went up Pratt's Hill.
But there was no torches, were there?
No one came prepared.
It was just, the missionaries have been doing this for years, and no one thought to bring head torches or anything.
No. Yeah.
But it was a good experience. I remember it being bitterly cold. Mm-hmm. I remember really enjoying it, and setting myself out that this was the start of a good couple of years. Then we went back to the B&B, didn't we?
Mm-hmm.
Had a last night of freedom, a last hurrah before the next morning we got our companions, and I just knew it was going to be Elder Bredlow. I walked in and I'm like, that's him. That's my companion. And then we got sent up to Dunfermline, which was a brilliant area. A member of the bishopric in Dunfermline had previously lived in my basement. So Ian Liston, do you remember him, Hewlett?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So the first night we got there, Elder Rasmussen and Elder Conway took us to a ward council. So we walked in, and he looked at me and he went, "I'm phoning your mother." So we got on the phone to her mum and said, "Listen, I'm going to look after him for you." So that was an interesting experience.
Wow. I love the Listons. They're great people.
Yeah. So it was 3 months with Elder Bredlow there. We had, I think it was about 4 or 5 weeks with Elder Rasmussen and Elder Conweasel in the same apartment. And then we got the flat above.
There it is. We
Yeah.
talked to Rasmussen on on Sunday night, and he was like, "I'm trying to remember how I got my Razzle
Yeah, Razzle Dazzle.
my Razzle Dazzle nickname and Conweasel," and I was like, I forgot that you had served with Bredlow there, so there's the answer right there. That's too
Yeah,
funny.
it was. I think it was Elder Bredlow that came up with the names, and it was just.
Was it?
I think it was him that came up with the names. Do you remember Elder Rasmussen? Do you remember his what was it, a pterodactyl he used to do an impression of?
Jeez Louise, I completely forgot about that.
He used to do an impression of a pterodactyl that would have you rolling about the floor. And I just remember, please do the pterodactyl, please. Or he'd do an absolutely stellar impression of Sister Vriens. And it was perfect. Absolutely. All he needed was a wig and a piggy nose, and he was sorted. He was so funny. Such a lovely guy. The pair of them were absolutely amazing.
Yes,
so we
100%.
Had, and that's when we played the prank on them. So I'd convinced Conweasel that the reason I'd come out when I was later was because I'd been in trouble with the police, and I used to boost cars. So me and Elder Bredlow convinced Conway that Elder Loggenberg had done this, and that's why he's later. And so that's how we managed to save the key for the flat. And so we snuck in one night. Elder Bredlow was in the cupboard in the bedroom where the fuse box was. I was under Rasmussen's bed. They got themselves into bed. Bredlow starts doing stupid noises, like scratching noises and that. And I've never seen... The funny thing was, when I put my hand out from under the bed and grabbed their ankles, it wasn't Conway that jumped into Rasmussen's arms. It was Rasmussen that jumped into Conway's arms. So you've got the short guy and the tall guy, and the tall guy jumps into the short guy's arms. It was so funny.
Oh, my word. Oh, it's too funny.
I'd completely forgotten about them and playing the trick with the chocolate laxatives. That was hilarious. But I was we got our apartments, and then we were playing basketball one Saturday with Hudson's.
Yeah,
Dom,
Tim and Dom.
Tim and Dom, yeah.
Yep.
And then there was Conweasel, Rasmussen, myself, and Bredlow. And I broke my elbow.
Serious?
So I typical, UK missionary, hadn't a clue how to play basketball, but I jumped up to try and steal a ball from Elder Rasmussen, and he just kind of picked it out of my hands, and I came flying backwards. I landed on my elbow, and I just said, Elders, we need to go to hospital right now.
Oh my gosh.
So and remember Bishop, what was his name?
Lynch.
Bishop Lynch, that's right, yeah, because he was a physiotherapist, wasn't he?
Yep.
And so myself, the four of us were in the hospital, and he looked at us like, what have you done? And so he made sure we got seen. I got an x-ray, sure enough it was broken. I got a cast put on it, and it was my left arm. So that was the Saturday, got a cast on it. We went to church the next day. We went to the Listons for lunch that day. And then the Sunday night, I asked for blessing from the missionary, from the guys. It was Elder Conway gave me the blessing. And then the Monday, the hospital wanted to see me because there was so much swelling, they wanted to make sure that the cast wasn't too loose now. And so the Monday, they took the cast off, and the swelling was completely gone. There was no bruising. So they decided to take an x-ray again. They took an x-ray, no break at all. So,
oh my gosh. I'd never heard that story. That's amazing. So you had an x-ray that showed that your elbow was broken.
Yep.
And another one that showed it wasn't
a few days later. Yeah.
Wow. Holy cow.
So that was the first experience for me where I knew that priest of blessings. And one, I knew where they came from, and two, I knew that, and ever since, I know that if I'm worthy when I'm given a blessing, or if someone's given me a blessing, that I know that whatever said is going to happen. I'll never forget, actually, in Elder Bredlow and I he used to love reading the almanac. I don't know if you remember that, Hewlett.
Mm-hmm. I do.
He would sit and read the almanac for. It was boring. I mean, I don't know why anyone would study the almanac. The church almanac it's not even exciting. There's not even any good statistics. So many blondes in the church or whatever it is. It's not even good statistics. But we'd gone out one day tracting, and we'd gone a way we hadn't normally gone, and we'd walked past one of the sisters in the ward's apartment, her and her husband, and she should normally be at work. And so we went, let's go and knock on the door and see if everything's okay. Now, she was married, so there was nothing like that, but we knew something was up. So we asked, she said, yeah, come in. And we chatted for probably 20 minutes. And as we left, we said, would you like a blessing? And we gave a blessing, thought nothing of it. As we walked out, Elder Bredlow looked at me and went, Elder Loggenberg, you can get sent home for things like that. I said, what do you mean? He said, you can't tell sisters to have babies. You can't. And there was, and I remember writing in a journal, and to this day I've never forgotten the words. It's, there are spirit children in heaven waiting for bodies that you will bring. And she just floods of tears. And we walked away from that. It was weird, and I never looked at her normally again. But it was unbelievable. It was just, the spirit was so strong, and it wasn't us. It was that she had been. You could see that she was suffering and she was struggling. I don't know the ins and outs of her story, but I'll never forget just that, the floods of tears. And I've had the opportunity to see her a few times at the temple with that child, and her husband, and it's just an amazing experience. That's one of the things that you don't get when you don't serve in an area close to home. When you see people at the temple, you see people that you served around and served. It's just a brilliant experience. So yeah, that was 3 months in Dunfermline. I don't know if you ever heard the Jobby Supper story, did you?
Maybe, but remind us.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So I was green, and I hadn't a clue what a jobby was. And Elder Conway, Elder Rasmussen, and Elder Bredlow had all convinced me that the jobby supper from this chip shop was the best thing in the world. So after football one night with the elders quorum, I said, don't worry, elders, I'll get us the jobby suppers. So we walked into this chippy in the rough part of Dunfermline, and I'm like, can I get 4 jobby suppers, please? And she looks at me like, are you stupid? I'm like, I must be pronouncing this wrong. I must have said this wrong. So she said, so I just went, can I get 4 Joby suppers? And as soon as I said it like that, Conway was gone. He was on the floor rolling, and I was like, I'm going to kill you. I am going to murder you for this. I was like, right, I'll have fish and chips and they can serve themselves. That was awful. But it was brilliant.
I'm pretty certain that Conway did the same thing to me when I got there, because that was when that happened in my mission. He's like, you got to get the jobby supper. I was like, okay, whatever. So mine wasn't nearly as dramatic as that. I was like, okay, fish and chips.
I still tell my kids about it, and they laugh so much every time. Daddy, when the missionaries are here, Daddy, tell the jobby supper story. So it's brilliant. So from there, I moved to Livingston. I was there for 3 months with Elder Nelson. Now, he was a powerhouse. He was just, and that was when you were in...
I was in Falkirk.
Falkirk, that's right, because you were district leader in Falkirk, weren't you?
Yep.
It was brilliant, Did we butt heads? Oh, yes, we butted heads. And there was days when I'm sure he couldn't stand me and I couldn't stand him, but it was hard work. It's great fun. 3 months. And then he
What was
went
Elder
home,
Nelson's first name?
Matthew Nelson.
Matthew, okay.
Yeah, you'll have to get him on. He was absolutely fantastic.
Okay.
And then Elder Webb, obviously, he's been mentioned a number of times. He was the traveling AP at the time. And because Nelson had gone home, I think it was 2 weeks early, because of visa stuff. And his dad had come a week early as well to pick him up. So I held out the web for 2 weeks. And he was just absolutely brilliant. We would memorize, you get to the doors and you remember the electrical box as you get to the kind of the tenement doors. And we would memorize the numbers on those electric meters while we waited for people to come. And then, a couple of Zone conferences later, he's like, what was the door at this? Who knows if he got the right number, but it was just brilliant. He just work. It was great fun. But Elder Nelson, he had the ward whipped into shape. So we arrived and we were doing 18, 19 lessons with a member present every week. It was nothing to do with me at all. It was all his effort and all the work that he put in. I remember the APs had asked us, because we'd been going from appointment to appointment in the car, they'd asked us to speak to people when we were driving between appointments. And so he was the passenger. And so we pulled up next to this guy, I think it was Bathgate. Pulled up next to this guy, and he had his elbow at the window, and he just pulled his hand out like that. And the guy thought he pulled a knife out or something. So the guy just ran. So we called the APs and said, maybe this isn't a good idea.
He brandished like a temple pass-along card.
Exactly that, yeah. But the guy, I mean, so would I think. It was a rough area of Bathgate. And he just pulled his arm out right next to someone. And it was just, the more you think about it, the more you just think, what a bunch of idiots. And then I had Elder Rayfield for 3 months, because I was in Livingston for 7.5. So Elder Alex Rayfield for 3 months.
Yeah.
And he was a really nice guy. He was just good fun, liked to laugh, and just got on with everyone. The ward loved him. Just a really nice guy. And then I had Elder Trent S. Clawson for my last 6 weeks in that area. And I'll never forget him telling the story about shooting himself in the foot, but I'll leave that to him.
I remember hearing that story. Goodness.
I just couldn't believe it. I'm like, it's just stupid. But he told me that story actually because we were playing at a member's house with a toy gun. And Hewlett, me and guns didn't do it too well on a mission, did it?
No. Goodness.
And he's just like, you don't point guns at people. And then I just used to say to him, you don't point guns at your feet, do you? No, he was a good guy. So then I was replaced in Livingston. I moved up to Dundee. I trained Elder Boughton, Elder James Boughton from the south of England, in Dundee for 3 months. And again, Sister Vriens, she let slip who my companion was before anyone, because he was the only English missionary. And she was talking to all the missionaries about getting the NHS, signing up with the doctors. And she went, oh, Elder Loggenberg, you don't need to worry about that. I'm like, thanks. Now I know who my companion is. The big reveal is spoiled. So that was good fun. And so he was, we shared a flat then with Elder Fisher, Devin M&M Fisher, and Elder Canucci, Jason Canucci. They were great fun. They really got on. They had some brilliant success as well there. Just really nice guys, down to earth, no pretenses. Weren't bothered whether they were called to different leadership positions. They're just there to get the work done. We played a prank on Elder Boughton where we set up a load of Joseph Smith pictures and stuff, and me, Elder Canucci, and Elder Fisher were pretending to pray to Joseph Smith. And Elder Boughton just walked down and he was like, you're just a bunch of idiots. And he didn't fall for it at all. He was just like, he just looked at us like, are you stupid? Do you think I was born yesterday? And then we did, what else did we do there? We were playing a card game one night. It was at Christmas. And we got permission to stay over at their flat. And Elder Boughton burped And it was almost as if someone had just served a piece of feces up in front of you. If the smell was that bad, the three of us had to leave the flat. It was so bad. It was awful. And then a couple of days later, the four of us came out of their flat because it was Liff Road. It was Liff Road, wasn't it? Because Bingham Terrace is the one closest to the city centre. So it was Liff Road. And there was a load of Neds that had thrown snowballs at us. And then so Elder Fisher turns around and he and I just start lamping them with snowballs, absolutely smashing them at them. And then I'm like, do you not know who this is? This is Eminem's cousin. And they're like, what? And then they're like, oh, yeah. So he starts signing pass-along cards from Eminem with love. And they were just completely fooled to thinking that he was Eminem's cousin. Absolutely sold. Hook, line, and sinker. And every time he saw us, that's Eminem's cousin. That's Eminem's cousin. But that was a great time. And so then we there for 3 months with Elder Boughton. Then I had Elder Kawahani for 6 weeks. Because we did our year mark, didn't we, together? Did we come up to your apartment and we burnt the shirts, didn't we? Because of me, Fisher, and you.
Yeah. We did it out just on like the point from our flat in our Roth. Yep. Yeah. I remember that.
That was good fun. And do you remember doing haircuts in the apartment? And then my mum had sent me a care package, and in it was a lot of shampoo. And so I think you cut my hair, and we took all the hair cuttings and put it on my head, and we took a picture and sent it to my mother and said, the shampoo's working brilliantly.
Oh my gosh, I completely forgot about that. That's too funny. Oh my gosh.
But I love Dundee. And there was one day, there was Elder Kawahani, myself, and Ben Keogh. Do you remember the young man who we took him out everywhere? He was an absolute champion. Yep. He really worked hard. He was just preparing for his mission. And we were teaching this lady, and she was a very attractive young woman. And I mean, drop dead gorgeous. Okay. So we had to make sure we had her with us. So we were in the apartment, and we're teaching. And I think Elder Kawahani is saying something. I'm pretty sure it was Kawahani. It was Elder Boughton. Anyway, one of the two. And Ben elbows me, and he's like, look over there. And the room was quite dark, and I looked across, and there was pictures of her at work. And she was studying law at Dundee. And to fund the law degree, she was working as a pole dancer in the locals. And so we're thinking, oh no. So we invited her to church, as you do. And as we walked out the apartment, he just said, what do we do if she recognizes the bishop? What do we do if she recognizes the stake president? And obviously it wasn't going to happen because they were great guys, but it was just hilarious. So we spoke to her. She wasn't going to, she wasn't keeping commitment. So we thought it best not to. But that was brilliant.
Oh my gosh.
And so then I moved down to Edinburgh for 6 weeks with Elder Gregerson. So we were, I think, one of 6 or 8 missionaries in the ward. And it was the first Sunday I was there. I was at the door with Elder Gregerson, and I'm, greeting members as they come in. And this old lady must have been in her 70s, 80s. And she looked at me and goes, Elder Loggenberg, I've not seen you for years. Going, that would be my brother 5 years ago.
Are you guys just spitting images of one another?
We do look alike, yeah. And he's as bald as I am. He's a lot skinnier than I am now. I put on a few stone after a mission.
Okay.
But yeah, so it was just hilarious. But Elder Gregson, he's a good man. What was his name?
I'm trying to remember.
Eric Gregerson. He was a drummer as well. He's now an airline pilot. But just really nice guy. I think he'd been trained by Elder Megna, and then Elder Megna had moved up. And so then I had him for 6 weeks, which was great fun. There was the office elders there, was Elder Who's the Canadian guy?
Sprague?
No, not Elder Sprague. It was after Sprague.
Canadian guy. I'm trying to remember.
He now has like a ranch, kind of lives off grid.
Oh, is it McLeod?
Not McLeod. No, McLeod is an absolute legend. You need to get him on. He will. You'll just be rolling about laughing. I can't remember the guy. It's bad at me because I looked at his Facebook the other day. I was, Facebook stalking people as you do. And they were just brilliant.
I'm trying to remember who else it was.
I can see his face. And he was a convert to the church. And he and I, because I remember he and I were talking about, patriarchal blessings. And he and I are both from the tribe of Benjamin. And he was like, I've never met anyone else before. And so we were just chatting about that. But he's a really nice guy. Really hard worker, just genuine guy. So
we'll figure it out.
And he'll kill me for not remembering his name. But he was a lovely guy. He was actually the zone leader as well when I was in Glasgow Stake with Elder Petty.
Okay.
Creighton Petty. So 6 weeks in Edinburgh. That was a blast. Real great area. I love being around President Sister Vriens. Never forget, we're playing basketball at the mission home as the missionaries with the office elders and the APs, and we were just playing around. And Sister Vriens picked up the ball, and she just walked past and just one-handed it over her head, and she wasn't even looking. One hand over her head, straight into the basket, and it must have been, at least 3 points at that distance, straight into the basket, and she just wiped her hands and walked away. It was brilliant, just absolutely brilliant.
I'm sure she was an incredible basketball player at one point in her life.
Yeah, I imagine she was very good because she was very sporty, wasn't she? She did a lot of sports.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't she compete for a college team and stuff like that in different sports and basketball?
I don't remember. That's a good question. That's not something that I remember anyway.
But no, she was great fun. And then Elder Lemon. You'll have to get Elder and Sister Lemon. I don't know if they're...
I got their phone number. It's someone I need to reach out to.
Do you remember that he used to teach you in a way that you'd ask him a question, right? You'd ask him what you thought was deep doctrine or, real kind of insightful stuff. And he would never just give you the answer, which was brilliant. He would just ask you a question. And I try and do that with my kids now. If they ask me a question, I try and ask them a question back. And he would ask you a question. So what do you think it could mean? And he would never never give you the answer. He would never serve it up on a platter for you. But it always meant that you then went away learning more. You went away and gained more understanding. So then up to Aberdeen for 6 weeks with Elder Midgley. And Elder Martin and Elder Ney. So the Elder Ney was with Elder Barber.
Mm-hmm.
No, I think it was Elder Martin and Elder Barber together, and then Elder Martin moved. But they would play one punch. I don't know if
I've heard of it. I'm trying to remember. I'm trying to remember what it was. Like just one hit,
punch and one arm. Yeah, so you get one hit, the other person gets one, and it's until somebody gives it up. And they would constantly have black and blue arms. And I don't consider myself a weakling, but I'm like, there's no chance I'm playing this because Elder Martin, he and Elder Ney used to go at it big time.
Well, Martin's built like a rugby player, and Elder Ney's a big guy too, right? So
Elder Ney was an absolute, really tough, and then Elder Midgley, he was a rugby league player, I think, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I think you're right.
But he was a good guy, and he was going home then. Loved Aberdeen. My own fault I didn't spend any longer there, but that's... So then there was a couple of weeks with Elder MacDonald, and it was just brilliant area, lovely people.
Mm-hmm.
Just mental note to any kids: don't get a good idea to go on a P day with other missionaries and you shoot a BB gun out the car, because like with Elder Nelson, it doesn't look very good optics.
That's
and
right.
there was 4 of us in that car. I don't know if you knew that.
I heard.
There was 4 of us in that car. Yeah. But listen, it was our stupidity, and rightly so. We got moved out. But blessings in disguise. Now, listen, it wasn't the Lord's plan that happened. That was our stupidity. But the Lord gives you second chances. So I then went down to Cathkin, which is the Rutherglen area, with Elder Daniel Maddock from down south.
That's right.
And he was exactly what I needed then. He was he'd been trained by Elder Pattenden, Stuart Pattenden. Just a really nice, really funny, great laugh. So I was there with 3 months for him, just shy of 3 months. And that's when the driving happened with Elder Clark. Now, I wasn't drifting. I don't have a clue how you drift. Elder Midgley's brother actually did drift racing. I think, if I remember correctly, his brother used to do drift racing, and I think he still does. He'll tell you. But we were going fast, and it was wet. And we'd driven through, it was after the zone conference one night, and we're driving back, and we'd driven through Rutherglen. And there was a guy walking down the street, was absolutely plastered drunk. Couldn't walk straight line at all. And he had a pair of very, very, very white chinos on. So I'm driving. Elder Maddock, Elder Clark, and it would have been Elder Hardy turn around and look at this guy, and he's obviously soiled himself, and it's basically brilliant white chinos, and it's all the way down his back. So we then did a quick U-turn and just drove really slow. And it was just... We laughed for weeks about that. It was disgusting. It was disgusting.
I thought you were going to say you drove by and there was a puddle and you tried to help him wash off his pants or something.
That's where I thought it was going.
There was no help. This was like, there was nothing you could have done. The guy was, yeah. And then, so that area it was a branch. There was about 6 or 7 people in the branch. And then we would have to speak. You know what it's like. You speak every other week. You say every other prayer. You bless and prepare the sacrament every week. And one of the best things about that area is we had to go and take the sacrament to a guy called Donald, who was in a care home every week. And we'd play chess with him every week. He was just a really, really nice guy. And the missionaries had been doing that for years, looking after this guy. Just a really, really nice area. In fact, we were at the temple in April this year for my daughter's first time. And the guy who was the branch president, Elder Brother Thompson, Carol and something Thompson, they were at the temple too. And I'd gone in a lift coming down and gone out, and he'd gone in a lift going up, and I recognized him. I knew him straight away. So I then ran with my kids, ran up and down and around to try and find his room. And I couldn't find it. So then I went to the front desk and I said, listen, is that a Brother Thompson from Glasgow? And the lady looks at me like, what are you doing? And then we spent some time with him. And it was just, he knew me, I knew him, and we just reminisced. And it was great. That's the benefit of serving so close to your home. You get to see people at the temple. And so I was with Elder Goodwin then for 6 weeks. I think he was trained by Elder Barber. So I was with Elder Goodwin for 6 weeks in the Cathkin branch. He was again just a really funny, really nice guy. Could make you laugh easily. Got on with everyone. And he and I went to get a haircut at the barber's one day on P Day, and I walked in and said, "How much is it?" He said to Elder Goodwin, he said, "For you it's £8, but for you it'll be £4." So that's when you know you've not got much hair on your head.
Oh God, it's too funny.
But that was a great area. It was really, my wife and I, after we got married, we went and visited the branch, and everyone's like, right, we'd had sacrament. My wife plays the piano, so she played the piano. And then at the end of sacrament, the branch president's wife she came to us and said, right, I found a house. It's just down the road. Would you like to put an offer in it? We're not moving here. We are not moving to Catkin Branch.
They're about to give you an assignment.
Basically, yes. If we'd stayed any longer, we would have been speaking for the next 6 weeks.
There you go.
It was, but it was that. I mean, that's the benefit of living so close. You get to go up and see people.
Yeah,
and then moved to Dumbarton Ward for 3 months with Elder Zacharias. He was 6'5", if I remember, or 6'6".
Taller.
He's not. He wasn't taller than that.
Oh heck yeah, he was. I'm 6'5". He was probably. He had to be closer to 6'11". I mean, he was way taller than me. Yes, he was. He used to have to duck through the doors and everything. I remember seeing him at a couple of zone conferences. I was like, man, that's a big man. And I'm pretty sure Barbara talked about him not fitting on the beds, if I remember correctly.
Oh no, he wouldn't fit in the beds. No, he was over 6 foot, so the beds, his feet were fully dangling over the edge. But I remember one day we were walking past Loch Lomond, the train station at Ballock there, and we turned the corner, and we saw this guy who was a giant as well. And you could see the two of them had clocked each other, and they were weighing up who was taller. And then he was like, right, I'm getting taller. And this guy was taller than him. And we walked past. He was like, sure, he was tall.
It's funny.
He was used to. His line was, "I'm a giant," because it was something, whatever it was to be a giant, to be classed as a giant. That was the height he was, and it was bang on the inches mark. You sure it wasn't 6'5"? So you're 6'3", are you?
No, I'm 6'5". Jack's what, 6'6"?
Yeah.
And he was way taller than me.
He must have been 6'9" then. He must have been 6'9".
I mean, somewhere in that arena, I remember he was. All I know is I felt small next to him, and that doesn't happen often.
Yeah, he was really tall. Really, just wanted to work. Just a great guy. Listen, all companions. It's like hindsight and rose tinted glasses. We loved everyone, but when you were in the thick of it, when you were tired, when you were wet, when you were cold, and they were chewing funny, or they were jiggling their feet when you were trying to do your studies, or when they were snoring, or when they would just eat your food out the fridge. It was, yeah. But he was a really, and you could see the genuine. So I was with Elder Goodwin at the time, and I'd got on exchanges with him, Elder Zacharias, and he was struggling. And so I called up President Fredrick and I said, listen, I'd like to serve with Elder Zacharias. And he's like, that's going to be your last moves, and that's where you want to go. I'm like, listen, this guy, I want to serve with him. I want to learn from him, and I want to be, this guy wants to work. And not that anyone else didn't want to, and not that Elder Goodwin didn't, and it wasn't, I was trying to get rid of him, but I just wanted to be with him, and will he thank me for that? I don't know, maybe. But it was 3 difficult months, but 3 good months as well. Christmas Eve, I got a call from the sister whose house we were going to for dinner the next day. And I said, so what are you up to? And so she was in her, I would say, late 50s, early 60s. And her son was up from London. And he was a member as well. So his son was up from London. The next morning, Christmas morning, he was arriving. And she said, I'm just painting the house for my son coming, and a few guys coming for dinner. So this was Christmas Eve. This is about 8 o'clock. In fact, no, it was later than that, because we were home and we were thinking. So we were at home, and I just said, Elder, I got changed. I said, Elder Zacharias, get changed. We're going to go and paint. And he's like, no, we're not going to. I said, listen, there is no way we are leaving this sister to paint. And we were there till 11:30, 12 o'clock. He just did it. And this was a sister and she didn't have much money. And let's be honest, the food wasn't going to be great. But she was giving everything she had. So what was a couple of hours? What was a couple of hours, eh? And
That's awesome.
painted the whole living room on Christmas Eve. And he sat down on the sofa the whole time. Now, I remember it this way. He may tell differently. He sat down on the sofa the whole time. And she and I painted. And then we went home. But it was a good time. Thoroughly loved it. But he was massive. I remember we had Jehovah's Witnesses knocked on our door one morning. We were doing companionship study. Jehovah's Witnesses knocked on the door. And we opened the door, and we didn't have our badges on at this time. And we said, "Come in." And as they walked in, you could see they were looking at us a bit funny, like something's a bit different here. And you could see one of them was looking around the apartment, going, "This looks a bit odd." Because we weren't gay. It wasn't it wasn't a gay couple. It's not student town, so it wasn't students. And they're dressed in suits. They've got ties on. It's 10 o'clock in the morning, and it's not working from home time like it is in COVID. And then they could see the copies of the Book of Mormon. They could see the Joseph Smith restoration pamphlets, and they could see everything. And they just started to slowly back out the apartment. And they couldn't get out of there fast enough.
Didn't that happen to you and I, Hewlett?
Yeah, not in our flat.
No,
but I do
maybe it was
remember.
me and Reed.
I do remember having a few conversations with the Jehovah's Witnesses. Always interesting conversations.
Yeah, and I think you look at it now as missionaries. You've got tunnel vision. You're there to do a job. You're there to work. You're there to invite others to come into Christ. We all know that the script. You're there to do the work, and it's not until you're older and you're serving in war councils and you're meeting with the missionaries and you're discussing these things. You're thinking there's a nicer way to do things, and it doesn't have to be cutthroat. Now, obviously, you don't want to waste time because the time is precious. If there's people that are ready to hear the gospel and people are ready to keep commitments, you're not going to spend months and months on them. But that doesn't mean they're cast-offs and that they shouldn't ever be looked at again. It's, nowadays, if I could go back and tell myself, not just because they don't accept the gospel now, but just because they don't keep this commitment right now, doesn't mean that they're not worth something. I think for me, that's one of the biggest lessons, is that a mission is more for us and developing and preparing ourselves for fatherhood, preparing ourselves for future service in the church, preparing ourselves for work. You look at, top companies in the US, and you look at how many on the boards of those companies and how many are CFOs and CEOs and all that sort of stuff who are members of the church who have been missionaries. And it'll surprise you the number of people that have been missionaries because of their work ethic. But a mission was great. I loved. There was days when I was homesick. There was days when I was tired. There was days when I was wet, cold, and miserable. And you just couldn't get warm. But I couldn't have asked for a better place to serve. I was thinking about it the other day. Thinking about this. Saying about how I was called to Manchester first. I think of some of the areas I could have served in Manchester, in the mission here. And it just wouldn't have been the same. I would have had similar experiences. I would have had wonderful experiences. But I wouldn't have been jobby suppered. I wouldn't have broken my elbow. I wouldn't have been able to make Con Weasel and Rasmussen scream. I wouldn't have had one of our neighbours in one of our flats in Livingston when Elder Rayfield and I served together. He tried to set me up with his daughter, who was blind. Not that that's an issue. But I'm like, I'm a missionary. I'm not here for days. This was a man that it was his granddaughter, and he's like, "Will you go on a date with my granddaughter?" I'm like, I can't go on a date with your granddaughter. He just saw missionaries and he saw they were clean living. They weren't out partying on a Friday and Saturday night. You know, they were in bed. They were up early in the morning. It was good fun. But I loved it.
Oh, man.
I loved it. I loved every minute of it. There was, as I say, there was days when you obviously, you'd have been anywhere else by choice, but you were grateful for it. Grateful for it.
That's one thing. Doing this podcast has helped me to realize even more. Like, I came home from the mission like really kind of feeling down about the experience that I'd had for 2 years, and I've carried some of that with me. But just doing this and talking to people and hearing the experiences that we all had in such a place, and the brotherhood that was formed there, and then those habits that you carry on throughout, there's nothing else that could create that.
It really is. I mean, it's the best 2 years of your life up until that point. You know, you meet people that will have a lasting impression. I mean, how many times have you given talks in church or done something for work and shared an experience that you had with somebody you either taught, somebody you served with, somebody you met on the street? I mean, we've all done it. We've all had talks. I've done training at my current job with the team I run. I've done training sessions with them and shared experiences as a missionary. And obviously, I haven't said as a missionary I did this, but it's experiences that you'll never forget. And it really does give you a wealth of knowledge and a wealth of experience for the rest of your life, if you let it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think interesting that you say that, Jack, about yours, how you came home with that negative experience. And I think we're conditioned to believe that if we haven't done certain things, or we haven't baptized a certain number of people, or if we hadn't done, X, Y, and Z, then it almost was a failure.
Mm-hmm.
And a couple of months after we got married, when we'd moved in, I got called onto the bishopric. So the guy who was the bishop, and he was in his late 60s, and got called, and then had dinner at his house, and he said, "I will never forget your welcome home. Your homecoming interview with the head council." And he said, "I knew then that when I was going to be bishop," he knew then that he was being called as bishop, and he said, "I knew then that I wanted you," because my wife was actually living in his ward. He said, "I knew I wanted you on the bishopric." He said, and he said, "Some of the experiences that you shared," and he said, "That's what I want. That's what I want. I used to have." He said, "I want the fun experiences. I want the crazy jobby suppers. I want to hear how the Lord healed your elbow. I want the youth to hear that. But at the same time, I want them to hear that it is going to be difficult. That there's going to be days when you can think of nothing more exhausting than going out again and knocking on doors in the cold and wet." So it's
Yeah, we think we're going to be like Ammon among the Lamanites, but most of the time it's Aaron, Omner, and Himni that mission is actually like. So
but I think a lot of it is, I never forget. So in my Greenie area, I think I got into one door the whole 3 months contracting. One door. And I had Elder Boughton fresh off the train. We'd just put the stuff in the flat and we'd gone out for a couple of hours tracting. And I'm like, "Elder, how many doors do you think we're gonna get in this week?" And he's like, 6 or 7. I'm like, "Oh, Elder, you may want to." And then part of me thought, no, let him believe it. And that night, must have been 2 hours tracting. 3 doors we got into. We got more houses in that first night than the whole 3 months of my Greenie area. Now, was that a missionary thing? Was that, he was just better than myself and Elder Bredlow? Or was it just because the attitude was different? The area makes a huge difference. You know yourself, Dundee. Dundee, you just press a buzzer and they let you in some of the students. You just literally, you'd ring. I remember I went on exchanges with Elder Petty, Creighton Petty, and our area was more students, and we just rang the buzzer and they would just let us in. And they always thought it was a friend, and they're like, "Oh, come in then." And we teach people, and they weren't really interested, but it was just different. It was a different area, and people were more open in Dundee than they were in Dunfermline. But then I think a lot of it is your attitude. He had the attitude that we would get in that many doors, and so who am I to knock that the wind out of his sails? So it was good.
Yeah, I appreciate what you're saying because, you do go on a mission with an expectation, and I think I was very fortunate to have Jack as my trainer, and he was like, "Okay, this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna work. We're gonna do the necessary things, and opportunities will present themselves." That was kind of like the mantra, but it wasn't like we're going to go and blaze a trail through this neighborhood and we're going to talk to 50 people and we're going to give out how many copies of the Book of Mormon or whatever. And it was a little bit harder for me to watch some of my other friends from high school who were, in Mexico or Uruguay or New York or all these different places that it's a different culture, it's a different situation, and opportunities are a little bit more plentiful as they're, "Oh, I baptized this family this week. Oh, and next week we got these people." And I was, it's easy to get discouraged, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I loved how you said in hindsight, like it was a lot for us and how we really gained that perspective and the perseverance necessary to go through hard things.
Mm-hmm.
And then ultimately put us in a position where we can say, well, yeah, but I also had an impact with this member.
Yeah.
Like Tim and Dom Hudson are two of my favorite people from the mission.
Mm-hmm.
And I like to think that the time that I spent, I was in their ward for 6 months, playing basketball with them. I'm really close friends with them. They came and stayed in my parents' home when I was still in college in Utah. So that's like the level of family love that we have. And Dom served a mission. He's been married in the temple. From the last conversation I had with him, he's doing great things in Australia. Mm-hmm. I think they're in Australia or New Zealand. I can't remember. But nonetheless, they are, I feel like I had an impact on his life.
Yeah.
And that's great. That's enough for me. And, I had 3 of those areas where I had 6 months in duration, which was a little bit of a unique situation. But I look at those 3 areas as places where I could walk in the door and still feel like I'm a part of the ward because that's how I integrated myself. I became one of those people that were there for that period of time. And that was good enough for me, is to be a good example and to help people realize that baptizing isn't the only purpose of a mission, but it's a part of it, right?
But the purpose, that's the goal, that's the wish,
Mm-hmm.
But the purpose is purely to invite others to come to Christ,
right?
By helping them to receive the fullness of the gospel. Okay, but it's the inviting, and it's not about selling ourselves short because Elder Clausen, his brother was in South America, I think he was, and his brother had baptized a village, and half of his mission was spent training this village on the church. And you see at the conference that's just gone, how many temples were announced in, in South America and stuff, and they're just going to keep growing and growing because there are so many people that want to join the gospel. And we saw it in Africa as well, in South Africa. We saw in the townships and the villages, and the people who have the least who will join.
Mm-hmm.
And people in Cape Town, missionaries there, baptize loads. And it's not saying, well, you don't baptize people if you go to Scotland, because that's selling yourself short. If you go with that mindset, then you're never going to baptize people.
Yeah, agreed.
But it's if you go in on your mission with to want to work effectively and efficiently, and to invite others, use every opportunity to invite others. And as long as you're doing that, the results may be one person, and that one person will be a village, or it may be a village. But as long as we've done that, and I think you see so many young men and young women who go on missions now, and it's hopefully we can help them, and that's why we've served missions, to help them and to help our children. I talk to my kids every night at the dinner table saying, "Don't worry, son, you'll eat a lot worse food than that in a couple of years' time. Don't you worry." Or I remember in Dunfermline when the first dinner appointment I ever had, and the dogs and cats were eating out of the pan that our food was served out of. It was the mum and the two sisters, Hewlett, and it was just, and you just like picking out hair from your teeth from dog hair. It's just horrible.
Yeah.
But then you're telling experiences of how you help somebody. When I tell my kids about how I painted that woman's house, and that's not a usual missionary experience. And other missionaries, I'm sure you two have both got experiences where you did something similar. But that's what a mission's about. It's about helping others. And for me, it was good. I enjoyed it. I loved it. Can't wait for my wife and I to be companions. Can't wait for the companionship inventories.
You don't have to wait. Pull out the Preach My Gospel and run to it.
There you go.
We do have family councils and we do have stuff like that, but it's invariably me getting told what I'm doing wrong and what I can do better. No, she's fantastic. I absolutely love her dearly.
Definitely looking forward to serving a mission with a companion I choose as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
And knowing that you're going to eat well most nights as well. That was a very sexist comment. Apologies, sisters. That was a very sexist comment because there's a lot of men that cook very well. Just my wife cooks better than I do. So, but yeah, all good.
That's great. Well, thank you very much for taking the time with us tonight.
No worries.
It's been great.
Yeah, absolutely. One parting thought. Tell us your memories of the Vriens, because you served most of your time there.
Yeah. Everyone said it before. You never forget the hugs from President Vriens. He had the ability, and I'm sure all mission presidents do the same, but he had the ability to make you feel like you were the only person in the room. And do you remember the zone conference when he really laid it down and said, he kicked the sisters out of the room?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Kicked the sisters out of the room. I said, right, elders, this is not happening. That's not happening. If you've got struggles with this, come and see me. I've been through it. And I'll never forget that, remembering him say that, and remembering him saying that I'd made mistakes before when I passed myself. And it wasn't that, I was struggling or anything like that, but it was just, I'd never really seen a leader before who'd ever really said that I've struggled as a youth, I struggled as a teenager, I struggled as a missionary. But he just said, elders, I don't want to talk to the sisters about this, but elders, this is what we need to do better. And we got told off. Absolutely, we got told off. The whole mission, and if we were doing something wrong, we got told off. If we weren't doing anything wrong, you still felt like you got told off. But you also got told that you can come to me with anything. And that's for me, President Vriens. And Sister Vriens, obviously Miss Piggy. But she would just look at you, and as Elder Fish, but he said it, didn't he, where she'd always talk to you with her eyes closed. She would never talk with her eyes open to you. And she'd be like, "Oh, Elder Loggenberg." You wished everyone could be like it. You know what? We all love our mothers, but she was a mother away from home, and you knew that she had your back. And you knew that if you couldn't do your washing, that she would tell you how to do your washing. And you knew that if you felt sick, you could go and get some help and some treatment. But a load of respect for the two of them. And President and Sister Fredrick, since they were, fantastic missionaries, mission presidents as well. I know Elder Lucas served around them a lot more. But we were very fortunate to have two very good mission presidents.
Agreed.
So,
Amazing.
Yep.
Is there anyone else? You've mentioned some great missionaries. Anybody else that you'd like to hear from as we're continuing on this?
yeah, love to hear from more sisters. You've got Sister Hogg, you've got Sister Roberts, Merrin Roberts.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember what Sister Hogg's first name is. You've got obviously Jenny. Elizabeth Kenny.
Mm-hmm.
Sister. Who served with? What was the one that served with Sister Kenny? The English girl.
Now you're asking.
She's now. I think her surname is now Lau. Lau.
Oh, Sister Lewis.
Not Sister Lewis. No. Sister
Lewis. I know exactly who you're speaking about.
Oh, you've got Sister. Yeah, she was dark haired, wasn't she?
Mm-hmm.
I think she was more from like Huddersfield, Sheffield way, kind of north of England. She was brilliant. Love to hear from them. You had Sister. Who was the one from Europe?
You had Sister Georgieva. I'm trying to think.
She was Eastern Europe, wasn't she?
Yeah.
Bogomolova.
Yep.
Yeah, she's brilliant. Because she married Elder
Fredrick.
That's it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Elder Muirhead, Conor Muirhead. He was a good guy. Brock Wilkie, Trent Clawson, Jason Canucci. He would be funny. But it'd nice to hear. I'd love to hear from all of them. I know obviously that's the goal. And who else have we not heard from? Elder Mace, both Chris Maces. You've got the one, the blonde-haired one, and then you've got the dark-haired one because they were cousins.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I was in his and Elder Drew's stake. We were in YSA together for a few months before they went out, and then I joined them afterwards.
That's awesome. Yeah,
so you've done Rasmussen already, haven't you?
Yeah, his will get posted. What's today? Tuesday on Thursday, early morning Thursday. So you'll hear that, and then we'll get yours up. But yeah, we've got quite a list of people that we've reached out to. We've got quite a laundry list ahead of us already.
Yeah, sure you have.
And then it's not going to slow down, but we're connecting with people all the time.
Do you remember the Harts? Did you serve around them, Jack, at all? Lavonda and Ralph Hart. Now he has passed away. She was the one. They were a senior couple, obviously, and they worked in the the family history, the indexing centre in Edinburgh.
They were taking photos of records.
Yes, they were doing the record. Yeah. Now she's an absolutely amazing story. She's got to be nearly going. But she actually grew up in an anti-Mormon family, and so she has got some story to tell. Absolutely amazing woman. Absolutely amazing.
Yeah, we've only had one senior missionary on so far. We'd like to get more. They're harder to track down because they're not as active on social media. But
yes,
or technologically savvy.
We can work around it, though.
Yeah, we can work around it.
You can't interview somebody that's not above ground, can you?
That's right.
Yeah, we've found that out on a couple of instances. That's true.
That's a shame, but they were great. But thanks very much. Really, really enjoyed doing this. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you. Anybody listening who wants to be on, you can still reach out to us. Find us at 51spylaw.com or just email us directly, S.E.M podcast at 51spylaw.com. Love to have you on. So we love you, Elder Loggenberg.
No worries. Thanks. Cheers, Jack.
Love you, Logie Bear. Cheers.
You too, Huey Bear. See you later.
Ta.
Bye-bye.
See ya.
Bye.